Hello there, and thank you for staying with the SABC News. You are now watching SME On Point. The trend of second-hand clothes shopping or thrifting is growing in popularity. According to earth.org, from 2021 to 2023, the value of global second-hand apparel market rose from 138 to 211 billion US dollars, and this number is expected to reach 351 billion US dollars by 2027. The swap movement led by Skye West is hoping to get a share of this market. We visited the swap movement earlier this week. The tough economic conditions are seeing consumers putting brakes on shopping for new clothes. Many are opting for pre-loved and second-hand clothes. This has given rise to pockets of small businesses. According to earth.org, thrifting is a sustainable alternative to purchasing new fast fashion as it keeps clothing in circulation. The founder of Swap Movement, Skye West, believes this type of thrifting is a winner.
Swap movement is a concept that started in Europe and it's moved to Asia. Women swap clothes, so they pay an entrance fee, very small entrance fee of 140 Rand. They bring up to 13 items of clothes that they don't wear, and then they can take 13 or more depending on how many credits they get for their garments.
West has turned the movement into a promising business where she even employs 5 other people and has systems and processes in place.
I have a team that's helping me grow it, and yeah, it's sustainable as well.
Yeah.
So people want to spend 140 Rand on a dress at thrift markets rather than 600 Rand on a dress in the shopping mall, Whereas here you can get a dress that's like a maxi dress that in retail it's worth 600 Rand, but here you just swap something for it.
Despite its growing popularity, West says, like any other business, it was not easy to get it off the ground.
Managing staff, it's not always the easiest, even if I do have a handbook. There's always things that you need to trial and error. In my business, one thing that I needed to trial and error was quality. So we don't accept blouses that are t-shirt material. Just because that's material, it's nice first hand, but second hand it's not so great. Also, like, you can't swap here like a Mr. Price for poetry. So if you bring a Mr. Price in, you get 1 credit. If you bring a poetry in, you get 3 credits. And then also, like, if you bring something that's over 1,000 Rand in, it goes to a different profile, because some people, they bring 20 items that are over 1,000 Rand, then they walk around here and they find truas and things like that, and they're like, oh well, I wanted polo.
West is sinking her teeth into the thrifting market. She now has established a shop where she rents out space to other thrift entrepreneurs. And in the meantime, she has big dreams for this movement.
Another goal for this year is to just maintain the quality of the stock. That is my most important thing. I want my customers to want to come back to quality.
Diabo Seto, SABC News, Johannesburg. How awesome and innovative is the swap movement? I really enjoyed my time there. Is this something that you are willing to start? I hope that you can get hold of the swap movement to find out how they can assist you in setting up your own swap movement. It's really an innovative way of recycling clothing and making sure that you get new clothes, even though they're not necessarily from the shop, while you give away your old clothes without discarding them in a way that is not environmentally friendly. So, credit ratings are often associated with the sovereign, but could they work for the SMME sector? Earlier this week, a roundtable was held to delve deeper into the evolving demand for industry-specific SMME grading. The discussion also looked at the growing and innovative ways of implementing them. Sevashan Pillay, he's the Managing Director of Credit Rating Analytics, was part of this discussion, and he joins us via Zoom to share insights. Welcome to SME On Point, Sevashan. A very interesting concept that I understand that Nigeria, you are helping the Nigerians to see if they can implement the system. Tell us about the benefits of a grading system, particularly for the SMME sector, and what benefits that would be for South African SMME sector.
Liabo, thank you so much for having me on today. Yes, that's correct. We actually are assisting the Nigerian government to create Africa's first SMME grading system. It's actually the first in emerging markets via the public sector. So in terms of the concept, SMMEs in South Africa, the majority do excellent work. But the problem is that, they often struggle with access to funding, access to business opportunities. So the SMME grading concept is a very innovative way to provide a very comprehensive analysis of a business and to articulate it in a very structured manner, so that the business appeals to lenders and business opportunities from large corporates or even other SMEs. So it's a very innovative concept, Liabo, and hopefully, we can obviously successfully pull this off in South Africa, as we are doing in Nigeria at the moment.
Yeah, tell me more about what you are learning out of the case study of Nigeria. What is it that you are seeing that you think you could learn from it as you try to bring this system into South Africa? I know that you have the support of the DTIC, you also have the support of the NEF has also given support for the system. What kind of learnings are you drawing from the Nigerian case study?
Well, that's a good question, Liabo. So just maybe taking a step back. So this concept originated from a project that we completed for the World Bank Group, in which we came up with the public sector model and we calibrated it for Africa and emerging markets in general. And, we're actually piloting it in Nigeria over the past 2 years. And there's actually lots of similarities between SMMEs in Nigeria and SMMEs in South Africa. I think lots of the stuff that we've learned from there can be incorporated into South Africa. So, for example, often many of the things that SMMEs struggle with here, SMMEs struggle with there. It's not just a question about access to funding, but it's a question of access to opportunities because, there's lots of funding that is available to SMMEs, but, you can't just fund an SMME, but you've got to sort of, upskill them and, there needs to be significant capacity building. So the SMME grading concept is not just about, profiling an SMME. So in Nigeria, capacity building makes up a large portion. So for example, we would typically grade an SMME across 6 major components, the likes of financial management, the management capabilities, the industry outlook, and the market opportunities for that particular business. And, we would grade these SMMEs, but there would be capacity building courses that would be built into it. So assuming we were to bring that to South Africa via the DTIC, who's really keen, we would grade SMMEs and we would also have DTIC-led capacity building initiatives that are linked to specific things that SMMEs struggle with. So I think from that perspective, we've actually managed to see what works, to see how practical it is, because it's comprehensive analysis and, whatever we see, what's working there, hopefully through the DTIC, we can obviously bring that in and incorporate it here as well. Yeah.
Servition, already people, the only thing that they are familiar with when we talk about credit rating and credit grading is the big 3 rating companies and the fact that they rate the sovereign and also your companies that are associated with the government or state-owned enterprises, and their grading systems are already very complex. Who would grade these SMMEs if the system were to be implemented in South Africa, and how would they or should they make it easier to look at circumstances of SMMEs as opposed to grading governments?
Okay, that's a really good question, Liabo, and you are correct in that in the news and in South Africa, we are much more familiar with, S&P, Moody's and Fitch, which focus on governments and large corporates. But the SMME grading concept, it focuses exclusively on SMMEs. So it's businesses from as small as startups to businesses that typically would have a turnover of maybe up to 200 million rand. So it's that entire broad spectrum. The model actually works really well. In France, I'll give you a good example. In France, France has the world's largest SMME grading system, private or public. It's run by the government, and a similar model will be implemented here. So in France has the world's lowest SMME loan rejection rate. It's just about 2% of SMMEs that get rejected for credit. That's because the government obviously grades them, builds up a nice business profile, and also mediates with financial institutions after the grading has been implemented. So in South Africa's case, it would be a government-led initiative. On the private sector, credit rating agencies throughout the world have tried to create SMME credit rating divisions, but it's not a very profitable exercise for the private sector. So it hasn't really amounted too much. And what we've picked up is that, in France, the concept is working phenomenally well. in Nigeria, we're seeing it working from an emerging market context.
Yeah.
And that's obviously with it being run through the government as it is in Nigeria as well. So I think in South Africa, the DTIC is optimally placed. The DTIC, under the DTIC, you've got the Development Bank of South Africa, you've got the IDC, you've got the National Empowerment Fund, and you've got various programs that the DTIC runs itself. So I think it would work really well from that perspective. And what's also interesting from the South African context, Liabo, is that we're initially going to target township SMMEs as a start and large enterprises.
Okay.
So at grassroots level, township SMMEs are a sector that's that can really benefit from this, from the capacity building, and as well as from the funding opportunities, as well as the business opportunities that this is going to open up here.
Yeah. In the last few minutes that I have with you, I see that we have on our screen here, it says we've got 5 days till the national elections, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts about how this SME community can prepare themselves for the incoming government in terms of their demands and how they want to be assisted with things like what you have just talked about credit ratings and other innovative ways that could make things, the development of SMEs, an easier thing going forward. What are your thoughts?
No, thanks, Liabo. That's a good question. So I would say that, if you look at running up to the election campaign, lots of the manifestos of parties, lots of the emphasis that they've been placing is on job creation. And I think that, whilst that is correct, I think that a lot of political parties are not focusing on how do you actually create those jobs. And, as you would know, based on the extensive work that you've done on the SMME sector, it employs about 60% of people in South Africa. It's responsible for about 50% of new job creations. And I think this SMME grading concept, it can actually appeal to a lot of the manifestos that the political parties are putting out, in that it can actually be a tool that can create those jobs. Because, once businesses get new business opportunities, they can get more staff. There's a lot of, I would also say it would be an economic emancipation of the SMME sector and all stakeholders that are linked to the SMME grouping. So from that perspective, I would say that, the SMME sector is a great way to, and the grading concept in particular would be a great way to uplift South African citizens from an entrepreneurship perspective, to get people excited about entrepreneurship, and to hopefully those stumbling blocks of access to funding, access to business opportunities, if the grading concept can alleviate some of those issues, I think it'll sort of drive more people to be involved into entrepreneurship by seeing that it might be a bit more easier, these access to funding hurdles and stuff might not be as significant. So I think, after the elections, I think it's actually an important concept. And I think post-election as well, I think the government should obviously, focus on bringing this groundbreaking concept to South Africa, because it will definitely make a huge impact here.
All right, Sebastian Pillay, will hear from our followers and our viewers because we are on SME On Point on Facebook. We're going to be posting this conversation with Sebastian Pillay from Credit Ratings Analytics on whether credit ratings specifically for the SMME sector could work on our Facebook page. We have been in conversation with him, and he tells us that he is in conversation with particularly the DTIC. They've piloted the project currently piloting the project in Nigeria, and he says it's working well in France as well. Let's wait to see if people who make decisions are able to bring the system in South Africa and if it works for you. But I'm really keen to hear your thoughts about whether the swap movement is your thing. I'm keen to hear your thoughts about whether the credit rating for SMMEs is something that appeals to you. We are on SME On Point on Facebook, and that is all that I have for you for this week. Nastasia is already standing by with more news after the break.